Good morning. We are live on YouTube, but we're going to bring in our Facebook groups here. Atlanta Falcons fans on all Falcons and Scott Kennedy Sports. And hit save. And welcome in, everybody. This is Forging the Falcons every Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. I am Scott Kennedy, your host in Atlanta. He, over there, is Nick Kendall. He is in Seattle, and we are coast to coast this morning to discuss the NFL, Atlanta Falcons, all of that things, because the way players jump around from place to place and between fantasy football, we're talking everybody. So, lot to cover this morning. Nick, how are you so far today?
I'm doing pretty well. A little tired. Had a harder time falling asleep last night because the dog slept up in the bedroom with us, and he was up and down off the bed. And the cat loves both pets love us both, but the cat is definitely my wife's, and the dog is definitely mine. So the dog just kept jumping up on me, and when 70 pounds jumps on you at 2 a.m., you get a little startled. So you wake up too. So a little tired, but thankful to have air conditioning in the bedroom for this hot spell out here in Seattle.
Yeah, I love my dogs and stuff, but between the shedding with a German Shepherd and the double coat that I've had for Shepherd mix for the last 20 something years, I won't let the dogs on the furniture. You're too big. There's not enough space. You're not allowed. You get other privileges. So let's say good morning to some folks in the stream that have come through already. And if you're coming in on Facebook, I see that the Heart React has already come in from Dom. So welcome, Dom, on Facebook. The DWI guys, Ethan, coming over from across the pond over in London, saying good afternoon, gents. And good morning, Ethan. And Mark Schrader over in Texas saying good morning, Scott. Good afternoon, Ethan. And he said this before you were here, Nick. So no offense. I was already here and I already said good morning to everybody. So Jeremy Sean also in, one of our early risers, saying good morning, everybody. Luke Wright in, saying good morning, Scott and Nick, and EJ also in. So hit those like buttons, check in and say hello when you're coming in. And I'm not sure what YMOF, but I know Jamal. Jamal says, rise up and good morning, Scott. Nick in the chat, good morning and welcome in, Jamal. We're glad you're here. And Dom is checking in on Facebook. So also saying hello and coming in. But first off, I guess the big news yesterday, why don't we just start off with that, was Julio Jones, arguably the greatest Atlanta Falcon of all time, and has really hurt his legacy in Atlanta the last couple of seasons, and didn't do it any favors yesterday by inking what looks like a one-year deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, coming back to the NFC South. Nick, your initial reaction when you heard that news?
My first reaction is, I guess, good for Julio. I'm very much a pull-in for the players, mostly as long as they're not playing in the AFC West against the Broncos. And Julio, has been a great player for his career. Definitely is well past his prime, as we saw with Tennessee last year. But hoping that he can go out on a solid note. A lot of players when they're older go out, a little sad, little whimper. But hopefully things go out well with Julio, and hopefully it's a better culture fit. Working with Tom Brady there can kind of demand what's expected. And I think Julio had issues in Tennessee with the expectations for practice and training versus the vet stuff that Julio was expecting. So you could probably speak more on that than myself. But my first reaction is, good for Julio.
He'd been able to kind of write his own check in Atlanta, coddled, so to speak, and he produces. So he'd kind of earned that right until he stopped producing. And then it becomes a problem, as long as you're out there and you're catching 1,500 yards and doing all the things that made you who you are, you can get away with that type of stuff. But, you say well past his prime, and, there's still that hope there, with a player like him, there's still that hope there that he's not well past his prime. He's just been injured. But the problem is that's what has pushed him past his prime. Can he get healthy now? Or has his age become such a factor that he cannot get healthy because he hasn't had good hamstrings in 2 years? That becomes a big problem. My initial reaction was, Julio, you didn't do yourself any favors on the way out. This certainly isn't going to help. I've heard he's trying to open a car dealership here in Atlanta. I don't think that will be a big problem. People will forgive. People get angry at the time, but then, as soon as it's all done and they're back in the community, like, oh, Julio Jones, yeah, we love you. He'll
Yeah.
always be good in Alabama, no problem there. But right now he's not going to be the most popular thing in the world. And I'm going to have to stick up for Arthur Blank here just a little bit, Nick. You've heard me mention the Rankin Smith days and what dark days, and when people start cranking on the owner. Nick, people understand the salary cap and what $65 million in dead money actually means to an owner. Can you explain that to them real quick, what that actually means?
All the dead cap. I mean, just
Yeah.
you're you are essentially, coming to a poker game of pennies. You just don't have the ability to compete. It's already burned off, and you are paying for ghosts with your
Mhm.
roster. So it's a big handicap. I think the example you've used has been college programs losing scholarships, which is similar. I think you have a little bit more. It's slightly different, but you're really limited in how you can attack the roster. So Falcons with that much dead cap, I think it's a good thing that they did it, because this is a team that was not really in a competing window. So
Mhm.
get your numbers right, get your books balanced, and then go from there. And I think that's what the Falcons are doing. But it's definitely a massive detriment, and something that I think all Falcons fans and national people should take into account when considering how this Falcons team is built right now, where they are, and where they're going.
And why it counts against your cap, even though the players aren't there anymore, is because it's money that's already been paid.
Hmm.
So again, as an ownership, I've already paid. Matt Ryan has already been paid $40.5 million by the Atlanta Falcons for this season. For the next couple seasons, but they rolled it up into one season. He's already gotten that money.
Yep.
Julio Jones counted about 7.5 last year. He counts 15.5 this year. Why does Julio Jones count $15.5 million against the Atlanta Falcons salary cap this year? Because he's already been paid
Yep.
that money. It's already in his bank account. He already got that money.
Yep.
Now, if you're the owner and that's your money, wow. That's if I had $65 million in money that is being out, that's severance pay. That's
Yeah.
basically severance pay is the easy way to think of that. It's 60 something million dollars in severance pay that counts on your books for this year that you are not allowed to then reallocate into your program, into your franchise. Yes,
Yep.
that's a handicap. But Arthur Blank, I think, was taken advantage of through his own. If he's got his biggest fault, maybe he's loyal to a fault, and he was taken advantage of by some guys that did some really really poor deals and hurt this franchise. And if it hurt anybody, it hurt Arthur Blank in the pocketbook. That's for sure. And shame on the Titans. The Titans restructured Julio Jones's contract as soon as he got there, ironically, to save cap space for the 2021 season. He counts $8.5 million on their cap next year. So why can Julio go to Tampa on the cheap? Because he's already been paid $20 million for the 2022 season by the Tennessee Titans and the Atlanta Falcons. Man,
Yeah.
Nick, that's good work if you can get it. Wish I was 6'3", 220 pounds and could run a 4.3.
God, I did not win the genetic lottery in that way. But yeah, another reason, just to get a little bit more in the specifics of how these contracts work, is that you're right. They are paid. They already got that money, and they paid all that money up front. It's the signing bonus,
Mhm.
and it's just a accounting function where the signing bonus is prorated or spread evenly across the cap. That's that guaranteed money. So when you're
Yeah,
messing with
across the
contract,
years of the contract.
yes, yep.
Mhm.
So when you're messing with spot rack or whatever formula, it's like, man, how does he have such a massive dead cap hit? It's the prorated, guaranteed signing bonus that he's paid up front. It's another reason that why having a cash rich owner matters. It's like, well, if this player is only counting 6 million against the cap this year, he's only counting 6 million against the cap, but he's getting, a 4 million base salary, 1 million roster bonus, and then the salary, the signing bonus is all being paid up front. It's why being able to put all that money into escrow, you hear that talked about, is so important. So teams that are wealthier have a bit more money, just have a little bit more of advantage. And even though there is a salary cap that helps even the field a little bit, but it's better to have more money to pay these guys.
But and when the salary cap matters is when those guys start to decline. You
Mhm.
know, when they're in their prime and you want to give a 25-year-old quarterback a 100, $250 million contract, that's not such a big deal because, you know, you want him, you basically, you're going to give him 40 million a year for the next 6 years. When he starts hitting his mid 30s or he's a skill player hitting his 30s and they start declining and you start looking at that number, Deion Jones is a perfect example. Why has he declined? Injuries, whatnot. But, you know, he's got a $24 million dead cap hit. It's going to cost you more to move him than it would to because of how much he was paid up front as in the form of a signing bonus. So some more folks rolling in here. Hit those like buttons as you come in. FC Donnelly coming in says, morning, fellas. Good morning. Kevin Fitzpatrick as well. Keith Robbins also in here saying, good morning, fellas. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. My initial thought is, you know, as far as Julio is, I'd like to see him get healthy. I really don't want him being remembered as that old guy that just collected a bunch of, you know, big contracts. I don't necessarily want to see him have a lot of success in the NFC South, but go beat up some other teams. And, you know, once you're in the playoffs, I think I'll still root for you. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Your head says one thing, then your heart says another. As soon as the games come on. And EJ comes in. He asks a great question. He says, Scott and Nick, do you think Arthur Blank and Terry Fontenot tried to work a deal to bring back Julio to Atlanta? No, I really don't.
Yeah.
He was Arthur Blank doesn't say much, but when he was interviewed about how that went down, he was hurt. You know, he takes this stuff very personally. Like I said, if he's got a fault, he's loyal to a fault, and he paid Julio Jones a lot of money. And, you know, Julio didn't give him the courtesy of a phone call for anything on his way out, give him a chance or anything. Just I went out and left. And Arthur Blank came out and said that bothered him, that hurt him. And I think that bridge was burned. And, you know, again, you've already paid him $15.5 million for this season. So, you know, can you get him on a $2 million deal? Would it have been worth it? Yeah, probably. Assuming he's going to come in and put in the work. I don't want a prima donna diva wide receiver coming in and says, I've already done this. You know, you guys go run routes. I'm gonna ice my hamstrings. I want a guy that's going to come in and work. This is a young rebuilding team. They need guys to come in and set an example.
Yeah. Yep. And it's part of the thing too, where I am very much fans sometimes like it, but going back to the old guard doesn't really work, you know, especially when it's been older, dare I say, more losing cultures. It's one of the reasons that the Broncos did not bring back Von Miller. It's a big locker room thing. It's not that Von Miller isn't still a great player, but you need new leaders to step up. You don't want just old habits, old behaviors, and hierarchies just falling right back into place. So this is Arthur Blank's team. This is Terry Fontenot's team. This is oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the
Kyle
coaches.
Pitts and Drake London at this point, you know, on the offensive side of the ball.
I mean, and Marcus Mariota too. I mean, you don't want to offense. Listen to this guy. We brought him in for his leadership and his veteran presence, and a lot of people rave about that. Bring in Julio. You know, some guys are in there. It's like, oh, this is Julio Jones's team. Duh, he's Mr. Falcon, as you kind of put it there to start off the show. So I do not think that they probably made a big deal. And also, would Julio want to come back right now? I mean, I know that he is definitely on his swan song kind of speak, but also you're talking about a team that we expect to be, you know, probably closer to battling for a top 10 pick than a playoff spot this season. So is that what Julio wants to do to close out his season? Because, I mean, going to Tampa, that's going to tick some people off, but he's still Julio Jones. He's still at his best years in Atlanta. He's still got, you know, seated every restaurant or, you know, every dinner table pretty much in Atlanta, at least I believe. It's not like he left on terrible terms and, you know, gave him the finger on the way out.
No, and I think, again, he could have picked any place he really wanted to play because he could have played for a veteran's minimum because he's already been paid $20 million by the Falcons and Titans already. So his compensation this year is going to be whatever Tampa's paying him plus $20 million in severance. So it's crazy. So good question, EJ. And Rose Stackson coming in. That feels like a new name, Rose. So welcome in. Glad to have you. Glad you're here. Looks like you're on a field. It's hard to tell on these thumbnails sometimes. That looks like a field in the background. So let's move on a little bit. Falcons practice opens today. Cordero Patterson was out at media availability yesterday. And I tell you what, I've missed the smile. If I don't remember where I first heard the phrase megawatt smile, but by God, it certainly fits him. He comes on and he just lights the place up when he's on there. And just listening to him talk about, this is where I wanted to be. They treated me. I love the way they treated me here. They just treated me like a kid who wants to play football. The money was the money, but this is where I want to be. I love it here. Why not retire here? Who doesn't like hearing that about a player talking like that about your franchise? It's dare I say, heartwarming to hear him talk like that. And Nick, I think people are writing him off a little bit. Almost, after he got hurt against the Cowboys last year, his production fell off. But the first half of last season, he was one of the top 3 or 4 running backs as far as production in the NFL.
Yeah, and that is despite the offensive weaponry around him not being very good and the offensive line being what it was. So it will be an interesting season for him. Obviously, last year I would say is the first year where you really started to get an idea of him as a running back. We saw it a little bit with the Patriots there, remembering 84 rocking there with the Patriots uniforms and like, why can't I put him in my running back spot in fantasy? But I would say there's more of a book out there on him now too, is what to expect. So will be interesting to see what he looks like. But I mean, big, fast, decent vision, and solid getting out in space. I mean, that plays in the NFL. I guess the biggest question is father time. The running back position hasn't taken the hits like a normal running back, but again, you still get dings and bruises. What does that look like? A year older, a year with a little bit more, hits on the body. So either way, though, a good player. Seems like a really well-spoken kid as well, and been following him, since his Tennessee days. I think you remember talking about him before he transferred to, or was he
Yeah, I saw him when he was, I don't remember if it was Hutchinson or where he went, but I put 5 stars next to his name coming out of junior college. What was interesting to me in junior college at wide receiver is he was always on the coach's side. So he wasn't on the quarterback's left or the quarterback's right. He was on the coach's side. So he was always on the coach's sideline. So, I don't know if he had some trouble with the plays or they brought him in or whatnot, but that was something that kind of a mentor of mine in the scouting business pointed out when he went and filmed him, and he sent me the film. He's like, check this out. He's always on the coach's side. But as far as a man with the ball in his hands, and that's what he says, just get me the ball. I just want the ball. But he's a lot nicer about it than Keyshawn Johnson was. And he's probably willing to do a little bit more to get the ball in his hands. And he will be returning. That was one of the things he revealed. He will be returning kicks at least until he gets one more kick return for a touchdown, which would set or break the NFL record. He goes, I got to get that one. He says, I'm going to keep doing it until I get that one. If I do, I'll probably stop. And you mentioned, he didn't have the wear and tear, but like you said, as soon as you turn 30, the recovery time for some of those nicks and bruises can take a little bit longer.
Yep. Yeah, and again, another year of tape out there on him, some of his tendencies, because he doesn't really play. He played running back. He liked to kick it out a lot. I think he had some of the most yards outside the tackle box in the NFL last season. Part of that, again, offensive line issues. But we'll be interesting to see how teams with another year of tape on him making that transition play. But good for him. I mean, fun player, was mid-late first round pick for the Vikings in that year. They had 3 first-round picks and kind of bounced around for a bit, but making a nice little name for himself there in Atlanta. Maybe another guy that, not like Julio Jones, obviously, but getting a seat at the table going forward in Atlanta Falcons fandom in the city.
Yeah, you mentioned something about, the leaders on the team. I'm like, well, CP to me he feels like he was the first guy out, at camp yesterday, the first guy out there. And why wouldn't you? That's well done, Atlanta Falcons PR, to get Cordero Patterson out there. And I fed that megawatt smile.
Yeah.
Talking about, I love it here. Couldn't wait to come back. Why wouldn't I want to be here? Live here. My kids love it here. I wake up happy. I'm like, yeah, I want him leading. I want him the first guy off the bus. I want the camera in his face. Let's talk about, we got some camp preview going on. We mentioned, some of the weapons here. I think on the offensive side of the ball, there's some that are already written in Sharpie pen. Kyle Pitts, Drake London, I think walks in as a number 1 wide receiver without a doubt. After that, there's several different receivers. Olamide Zaccheaus, Damiere Byrd. We talked Brian Edwards. I'm sorry. Braylon, that shows my age. I've told you I do that all the time. I don't know how announcers don't do that more You
Go
know,
blue.
yeah, Braylon Edwards was, I think, Michigan wide receiver like in the 90s.
Yeah, I remember him. Back when they still had
But
NCAA football, I had to double him, that kind of thing with the Hawkeyes. But
but
go ahead.
yeah, but Brian Edwards, there's some intriguing folks there. Um, but then the quarterback position, how long a leash do you think Marcus Mariota gets? And speaking of a long leash, Mark Schrader's got as long a leash as he needs on this show. So Mark's one of the good ones, and coming in with a big super chat again, helping keep the lights on, keeps my forehead nice and shiny. So Mark, thank you so much for coming in orange on the super chat. You're a huge help to the show,
Yes,
part of the
sir.
show for us, and appreciate you being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Mark got me distracted. What was the
No, talking about, Marcus Mariota, how long a
Mhm.
leash do you think he gets
Yes.
before we might see Desmond Ridder? Because it's funny, I saw, in the Twitter sphere talking about, Matt Ryan couldn't run and then they draft Desmond Ridder. Ha. I'm like, wait, what? Desmond Ridder can fly. Desmond Ridder is a 4-5 guy. He is,
Yeah.
if he doesn't look like a mobile quarterback, it's because he's a good pocket passer.
Yeah.
So he's got lots of tools and a very prolific thrower. Got him for a relative song in the third round. We thought he might go top of the second. There was talk of him getting, people moving up into the back end of the first.
Highest rated rookie quarterback in Madden.
Okay, good. He's not, there's not a ton of pressure on him. How long a leash do you think Marcus Mariota gets going into this season?
I think it has a lot more to do with Desmond Ridder than it does Marcus Mariota and the trajectory of the team. Now, if Marcus Mariota, falls completely flat or, gets injured, which he's had a history of some, injuries in his career, then you see Desmond Ridder take over. But I think a lot of it is more about how quickly they feel comfortable with Desmond Ridder and how quickly things potentially get off the rails this season for the Falcons. If you're 2/3 way through the season and you have 1 or 2 wins and Mariota, you're not really getting a bolt from that, you are in a position where you have live reps where you can develop / evaluate the young quarterback on your roster. Because if you have 1 win through 12 games of the season, you're talking about Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, maybe somebody else emerging. So I think it's more about that rather than what Marcus Mariota does or doesn't do outside of the injury side of things.
Yeah, Marcus Mariota, he's basically on a 1-year deal with a 1-year club option. It's a 2-year, $19 million contract, but it was 6, we'll just call it 7 million guaranteed. His dead cap number drops to $2.5 million, and his cap hit next year jumps to 14.5. He ain't playing on that contract, unless he plays to $15 million type of player, which would put him borderline top 10 money. Because there's a big drop off after you hit those 40, 50, it goes from like 30 to 15. There's a big drop off on the salary. So he's on basically a 1-year deal. Considering you paid Matt Ryan $40 million to leave, dropping 2 on Marcus Mariota isn't really a hindrance on him. And as Joe comes in, he says being a good pocket passer makes people think he can't run. And yeah, he can fly.
Yeah.
He is a pocket passer. Just because his first reads are, okay, 1, 2, 3, take off instead of 1, take off, like a lot of the guys that can run like that are. They don't trust their. Malik Willis was a lot like that, Nick.
Yep.
And a lot of those guys come in. Malik would make his first read, and if he didn't like it, he'd take off running. And we talk about the progressions. Desmond Ridder will go through his projections. Not projections.
Progressions.
What did I just say?
Progressions.
Thank you. I'm like possessions, projections, progressions. Wait. All right. He'll go through his progressions, but he was farther ahead as a quarterback at Cincinnati without a doubt. Does he have the raw tools that Malik Willis does? Maybe not.
Yeah.
But no, there's definitely some tools there. Michael Ranquillo coming in, saying good morning, Nick and Scott, and on Foraging the Falcons. Have a great show. Thank you, sir. And Albert Knoppers coming in as well. But Marcus Mariota's got the chance to earn himself a nice paycheck again for the 2023 season. And I think he'll come in. The job is his, until he loses it. You don't necessarily want to throw Ridder out there. I think it's his, to take it and run, so to speak.
Yeah, and I guess here's a question for me, and maybe a cautious tale for Falcons fans out there. But let's say you have 4 games left in the season, and you do see Ritter out there, and you have a chance to take a quarterback that you love. I don't think there's anything that Ritter can do, honestly, that would keep me from considering taking a quarterback if I'm in the position to do it, because you didn't. 4 games is not a sample size to do that. And what you are going against is not just the 4 games and the potential. You don't just have 4 games. You have their entire bevy of college tape as well that made him a 3rd-round pick versus, potentially a top 5 quarterback. So is it fair to Desmond Ritter in that situation? No, but it's not about being the most fair to every player in the roster. It's about getting a quarterback and winning football games. So will be interesting to see how that plays out. But I just my head goes to again, maybe too much scar tissue on this one. But Drew Lock, 4 games at the end. Oh, the Broncos finished, or 5 games. They finished 4-1. They played like 5 of the bottom 10 defenses, and his stats were 5 yards per attempt. Yeah. Oh, they won though. Okay. But just like, don't take the cheese on that one. If you are in a position to get a quarterback and you haven't seen much of Ritter, it's the potential. It's like, did you watch Family Guy, Scott?
Ever? I don't.
No? Okay. It's one of the earlier episodes. It's like, okay, you're coming to listen to this timeshare offer, blah, blah, blah. And after you're done, you have a chance to win a boat or the mystery box. It's like, oh man, mystery box could be anything. It could even be a boat. You know how bad we wanted one of those? Like, just so I guess maybe not the best analogy because it's a draft pick. It's still the mystery box, so to speak, but 4 games, small sample size. It's also part of the college tape evaluation.
Yeah, it is. And I guess worst case scenario is you end up with, someone like Will Anderson instead if you pass on a quarterback. But
another wide receiver.
You better hope another wide receiver. Don't do that to me, man. Jamal comes in. He says they're trying to win, so Mariota's going to get a chance to have a bounce back year. And I agree. It's his job. It's his job to lose. So, how long before he loses it, if it happens, 1 in 5, if they start off in that neck of the woods, around week 6. Let me pull up the schedule here real quick. While you address Jamal's comment real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Mariota, obviously they're going to try to win this season, but you can try to win in the locker room with those guys where the roster structure and setup says, you know what, if anything we win this year is just gravy, but we are definitely a get right season as well. But hopefully, Ritter is, I don't know, I'm pulling for both these guys. They both seem like great guys. So not pulling for one or the other. I don't really have any chips in on this one. But do like Marcus Mariota. I've been a fan of him since his Oregon days, and like Ritter as well, especially for where the Falcons got him. And best case for the Falcons is probably Ritter, lightning in a bottle. You get a Dak Prescott kind of quarterback, and off you go. Not many non-first-round quarterbacks have really taken off over the last decade. I think it's 4.
USA, and we can segment to this also. USA Today had a season prediction. They had the Falcons with the number 1 overall pick. They had them 2-15. And Nick, that might be close to where I had them. I meant to go back and look when we did a season prediction when the schedule came out, and I'll go back. But I may have had them 2-15 or 3-14 also, because I just don't see many games except for maybe the Bears and the Panthers at home where they're going to be favored. So open against New Orleans Saints. That game's not unwinnable. That's a winnable game. They won't be favored, but you can beat the Saints at home. I wouldn't choose the Falcons, but it's not unwinnable. At LA Rams, I hate to say, hedging this, knowing that no game is unwinnable, but that's not a game you would think that you're going to win. Yeah. Seattle Seahawks are beatable week 3, but it's back-to-back West Coast trips, against the 12th fan on the road at Seattle is tough. Cleveland Browns is a wild card. They could be a playoff team or they could be 0-17.
Yeah.
That's a really strange one. Week 5 at Tampa. That's not a game you would pencil in as a win. So again, you're not going to be favored in your first 5 games. Then you come home with San Francisco, you go on the road to Cincinnati, then week 8 is Carolina Panthers. Week 9 is Chargers. So, it's conceivable that you're coming back to Carolina after week 7, 1-6.
Mm-hmm.
It's not out of the. You're more likely to be 0-7 than you are 3-4. That's just the way it is. So if you're 1-6, even 2-5, and you're coming back, that might be a good place where you say, okay, the leash is long enough. Carolina Panthers at home, Sunday, October 30th. That might be the place where you might think about making a change if that's the way it goes. So I think that's where that might be. And Joe Cannon says, could Ritter show enough in the preseason to make a push to start the season? Never say never, but I think they're close enough physically that the experience will go. If I like Ritter, I don't necessarily want to throw him to the wolves right away. We saw what that did with Jalen Mayfield. Jalen Mayfield is an interior offensive lineman. He's just got to, you're expected to take your lumps there. You can end a quarterback's career basically by throwing him out there before he's too ready, just making him gun shy and all those type of things. So I think you will definitely hedge. So while possible, I think I would bet a lot of money. I'd give it 10-1, 50-1 that Marcus Mariota is this, if healthy, the starter week 1.
Yeah, it would be pretty shocking, non-injury related, if that's the case. But again, coming back, it was pretty. And this is another thing. I think it should be pretty obvious almost immediately if Desmond Ritter is going to be a guy or not. Sometimes you have the Josh Allens where it's like something clicks, but Josh Allen had 99 on all the physical traits in the league. And not that Desmond Ritter isn't a toolsy guy, but he's not a tight end body with the strongest arm in the NFL and one of the top 5-10 athletes of the position at the same time. So it's a little bit different. And I just keep coming back to Dak Prescott. I don't know if you remember Dak Prescott's preseason that year with the Cowboys. I was working with a Cowboy fan at the time, and I really, really liked Dak coming out of college. So I was interested to see how he'd play. But it was pretty obvious immediately that it's like, oh my gosh, this Dak guy, he's out here killing it. And it's just preseason games, so obviously you still want to see what it looks like. But it was pretty obvious and apparent immediately that Dak could play. Now, granted, the Falcons offense this year around Desmond Ritter versus what that was it 2016 Cowboys offense with Zeke and that offensive line and everything, a lot different. But still, I think you should have an idea hopefully you should have an idea pretty quickly if Desmond Ritter belongs or not, because rookie quarterbacks, this linear progression, this linear growth, it's a lie. It's not a thing. A lot of time, I mean, how quickly was it obvious that Patrick Mahomes was the guy, or Joe Burrow, or Justin Herbert? Quickly, and fans like to hold out on hope and whatnot, but those guys that switch turns on them, that's a pretty rare exception.
Yeah, looking back last year, the quarterback class was a bust. I saw plenty from Trevor Lawrence. Mac Jones, again, he was the quarterback of the best team. Yeah, he could be a shepherd, so to speak. Yeah. Justin Fields, we need to see more. The jury's still out. Trey Lance. Trey Lance, we'll get to see him this year. Obviously there is no jury out there. He's got an incomplete completely right now. Zach Wilson, I would hedge towards bonehead, and that's the part. I mean, and I hate to say that, but when it's Jay Cutler-ish for me. He may throw for some yards, but I always refer to Jay Cutler as the dumbest smart guy I ever saw play. Going to Vanderbilt, I know you were smart, but you played like a bonehead. You were always putting the ball in places you shouldn't do, trusting your arm to do things that you shouldn't be doing. That's what I saw to Zach Wilson last year. Plenty of tools, but can you get over the putting your team in danger gene that looks like he's got? Because when he was having the most trouble was when he had time, when he was on the run and freelancing and just able to get rid of the ball. Mike Vick-ish. when Mike Vick broke down a play, that was when he became real scary. He wasn't quite as scary when he sat back in the pocket. Mike Vick was a lot better than Zach Wilson showed last year. So, while early if you've got him, you don't necessarily know that you don't just yet. I think the jury's still out on those guys just a little bit. Jamal coming in, sticking up with the Falcons here, saying, keep sleeping. The Falcons are going to win at least 8 to 9 games this season, maybe 10. Just depends on the O-line and defense, but I think both are going to step up this season. And Jamal, those are big ifs. Is part of the problem. Your wide receiver room is largely untested with Drake London, and then you've got Olamide Zaccheaus, who was a 4 or 5 not too long ago. But again, forget all that. You said it right here. Your O-line and defense. Your O-line last year was one of the worst in the league. You had the worst pass rusher in the NFL in Jalen Mayfield. I think he'll get better. And if he improves to just bad from the worst, that'll help. That will help. Can Jermaine Freedy do a better job at right tackle, or can Caleb McGarry play for a contract because his fifth-year option did not get picked up? He'll be a free agent. The interior line still has two big question marks on it next to Grady Jarrett. I like the linebacker group. I really do. Safety, you got questions at both safety spot, and the two corner spots and the nickel corner looks pretty good, assuming Isaiah Oliver comes back healthy. That's another big if. Whew. That was a lot of question marks, Nick.
Yeah.
And we're not even sure what we're getting out of quarterback. So that's a lot of question marks. And then there is zero depth. Zero. So any of those injuries, and you're putting in a guy off waivers off a practice squad somewhere. So that's why there are so many questions and why the outlook on the team isn't overly positive. We'll see. That's why they play the games, right?
Yep, absolutely. You don't know, and we're just projecting. We're prognosticators. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. But I'm pulling for the Falcons. Love the team. Been following them for a bit. They were one of my favorite teams in Madden for a while. Hey, get in line, Nick. How original. But it would be a lot of fun. Also, I'm a certified. I am a card-carrying member of the Tom Brady haters. So anybody that can punch Tom Brady a bit. He's a little bit more enjoyable in Tampa than in New England. Maybe for me, maybe not for you guys. But any way that you can get a jab at Tom Brady, I'm about it. So losing a game to the Falcons this year, oh, beautiful. Sign me up. Likely? No. But Falcons winning at least 8 to 9 games. I'll believe it when I see it. You can call me a hater. You can call me a doubter. I just think they have too many question marks at too many important positions. And if they had, let's say, you wipe out everything. Everything's the same. And you had a top 3 quarterback that, can go nuclear and win you games. Maybe we're having a conversation there. I just don't think Marcus Mariota is that guy. I think Marcus Mariota is very much the pilot. If you have a great roster, your top 10 offensive line, a top 10 defense around him, then we are talking, 8, 9, 10 games, I think, because he can steer a good roster. But he's not the quarterback where you can put it all on him.
And again, people underestimate how ridiculous $64 million in dead cap money is.
Yeah.
How ridiculous that is. So the Falcons have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They have 7 players on their entire 53 right now. 7 that are a $4 million cap hit or higher. Just 7. And they have $63 million in dead money. They could double that number with and go from 7 guys that are $4 million players to 21 guys that are $4 million players if they could get that money back. They can next year.
Yeah.
And Jalen Mayfield wasn't supposed to be a starter last year. I know I stick up for Jalen Mayfield. He played more games last year. He was actually drafted to push Caleb McGarry at right tackle and was forced in at guard. But the only replacement they have, the guy that got hurt, was it Gano, who thought they could bring in, or Andrews. They thought they could play that spot. They're both gone. So the only replacement they brought in to push Jalen Mayfield is 6th-round pick Justin Schaefer. The person they brought in for right tackle is Jermaine Freedy, who is a cast-off for the Chicago Bears. So personnel-wise, hasn't gotten a lot better. That's kind of scary. Should they be better? Yeah, I expect Jalen Mayfield to be better. I really do. 1, he can't get worse. And 2, he played more games at guard than he did for the Falcons in the NFL last year than he did games for the Michigan Wolverines. I think he only had 14 starts for the Michigan Wolverines at right tackle, and he played 16 or 17. I think he played all 17 last year, Nick. So I expect Jalen Mayfield to improve. And again, if he can improve just to bad from the worst, that'll be a big step in the right direction. But again, those are a lot of ifs in key players, and you're not going to get the right answers from all of those that we just went through. We just went through like 8 season-breaking ifs. What about the pass rush? We didn't even mention. I skipped the edge position. When I went through, I went interior line back to linebackers. Lorenzo Carter, is he going to be an upgrade over Dante Fowler? Maybe. He finished well. Yes, Arnold Ebiketie and D'Angelo Malone will be an upgrade on Stephen Means. That one I am confident in saying yes, but will they be plus starters? Probably not. Probably not as rookie edge guys. They won't be plus guys, but they will be improved. The big improvement for me on defense is going to be Casey Hayward for Fabian Moreau. And that's still a big one because Fabian Moreau was a sieve out there. He was just miserable to watch. Casey Hayward will go out and play. So I'm definitely looking forward to that one. But again, lots of questions to be answered. And it won't take long, Nick. They're back at practice. We won't get answers at practice because it's all internal. But preseason games are right around the corner, and we'll start getting some answers when the regular season kicks off here. It comes quick. It does. It comes quick.
What are we, 1 month from today's I thought I saw 1 month today from his week 0 of college football kicking off. So we are right around the corner with all of that. So really excited for that. And one last question here before I probably got to get going here pretty soon, Scott. But will Troy Anderson be starter in his rookie year? What do you think, Scott? Because I know you are a big Troy Anderson guy.
Yes, maybe not right away. But will he start by the end of the season? Again, assuming I hate repeating this every time, but assuming they stay healthy, assuming without injuries, yes, Troy Anderson will be a starter for the Atlanta Falcons before the season is out. He is physically an upgrade in every way on Foye Oluokun. Good luck, Foye. I'm glad you got the bag. My God, what a contract you got. Congratulations. I'm happy for you. I'm also happy the Falcons didn't try and match that deal at $15 a year for an inside linebacker. And Troy Anderson is bigger and he's faster. Now, Foye was an Ivy League guy, so definitely I'm not going to say smarter. That doesn't necessarily mean football instincts, but he led the league in tackles. He had instincts, but he's 220 pounds soaking wet. Troy Anderson is going to come in 245 and knocking on the door at 250 in the next year or two, as he just keeps getting bigger, as these guys do in the NFL as they mature. He was a conference player of the year on both sides of the ball. So as a running back, and I think he even played some like option quarterback at Montana State, I think it was, a lower division.
And running back.
He was definitely all conference running back before becoming all conference linebacker. The description for a guy like that is football player. Football player. And yes, I want a guy with this kind of instincts playing middle linebacker for me that can drop a 4.45 40-yard dash at 240 something pounds. Love Troy Anderson.
And the thing about Troy Anderson too, with how he tested, if it doesn't work for him at linebacker, let's say the processing is not there for him. You talked about playing quarterback and running back, but it's still a projection for him processing. The tape at Montana State had him guessing a good bit and making up for it with his athleticism, which is not a shock given it's still pretty relatively new to that linebacker spot. But given his athletic profile and his size not being too diminutive, if he can't hang at that stack linebacker, that second level, you got a guy who has an option at edge. I mean, you could really, in theory, Micah Parsons him to an extent. Now, not going to be Micah Parsons, but
Micah Parsons was a freak on a different level. I mean, he was 4.3s with 4.0 shuttles, 40-inch vertical leaps. Troy Anderson is a plus athlete in the world's greatest athlete sport of the NFL football. He's a plus athlete. He's not Micah Parsons, but you don't have to be Micah Parsons to be really good.
No. Yeah, and I'm just pulling up his mock draftable right now. But and it's Anderson with an E. I always get that one wrong myself. But if you put him at that edge spot, I mean, he's small for the position, no doubt. But the 10-yard split, which really matters to the edge spot, is a 99th percentile, 40-yard dash 98th, vertical jump 80th, broad jump 95th. And you could probably add a little bit of weight to him as well. But his number one comparison, Nick Benito, up there. So some other guys like there's Sam Williams.
And you know who I was thinking was because he played inside linebacker. I know he'll butt heads and set an edge. Was a tougher Vic Beasley. Vic Beasley was an undersized speed rusher who helped lead the Falcons to the Super Bowl in 2016 with a one-hit wonder type of season for him. Thank you, Vic. Wish you would have been able to sustain it. Ethan comes in, says, good show, gents. Learning more each week about the Falcons. It's a fun year. The more you learn about teams, the more fun they are to watch. It's hard sometimes just to turn a game on cold unless you're playing fantasy. So I think this will get going for sure. And Kevin coming in saying, I can't disagree with you guys the last, but I'm an eternal optimist. 8 and 9. I think our coaching staff is a 12th man. I'm going to post later this afternoon. I'm going to post some quotes and stuff from Cordell Patterson and just listening to him talk. I've said before, one of the reasons I want to try and set expectations for folks that are coming and saying this should be a playoff team is because I think Arthur Smith did a fantastic job last year. I love the way the players talk about him, including Cordell Patterson last yesterday, just saying, hey, he's the man. Arthur Smith, whatever he wants, will do. I love that. He seems like a player's coach, but there's no question about who's in charge. And again, ringing 7 wins out of that team last year was really good. The schedule's harder. And again, you're playing with $65 million. You're paying other players $65 million to play other places. And I want to see Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot with the Atlanta Falcons years 3, 4, and 5 with their team, their salary cap. I want to see that. So I agree with you. I'm very pleased with the direction of the franchise, Kevin.
Yep. Hard not to be. We'll see how it turns out, but definitely seems to be on the right path.
So, yep. And Jamal finishing up. The regime is dishing the last regime. Yep, they are. And again, but they're coming to a gunfight with a knife. One arm behind their back, whatever cliche you want to use. That again, you knock off a quarter of the salary cap, and it's hard to compete. It just is. So we will see. Nope, try again. And there's no reason for that. Wait until I'm wrong before you tell me I'm wrong. Okay, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. You could be right, but at least let me be wrong before you LOL and tell me I'm wrong. Because right now, neither one of us are wrong. That's what makes this fun. So on that note, appreciate you coming in, EJ. Appreciate you coming in, Michael, Ethan, and Mark Schrader. Thank you for the stars contributions.
Yes.
Helps keep the lights on. Like I said, keep my forehead nice and shiny. I am headed over to Mile High Huddle to assist Kim with beckoning the Broncos. It's not there yet because I checked before I came live here. The stream is not live yet, but it will be. I have to build it because it didn't get built. So that should be on there any moment. And, as EJ says, presenting sponsor, well, Mark and Ethan. Mark and Ethan were our presenting sponsors today. But as always, check out Ryan Kennedy Homes. Ryan Kennedy Homes for North Metro Atlanta, in your area, hot market. Great place. I'm not going to show the billboard on this, but we're going to get out of here and let everybody get moving, get over to Mile High Huddle. So, but Ryan Kennedy Homes, check it out. Do some shopping. If you're looking to upgrade, if you're looking to sell, get into the area. You're going to need an agent. So yeah, we're good. Yeah, we're good, Jamal. Like I said, he said I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about the national media. Yeah, but the thing is, though, is I don't necessarily disagree with what a lot of the national media is saying. I kind of agree with this. I've got my finger on the pulse of this team. I've been here a long time. The part of that, though, I always say everybody's biased. It's a non-biased opinion. It's impossible. Bias is what makes us who we are. Now, can you recognize your bias? And I'll admit it. My bias as a lifelong Atlanta sports fan is I am a negative SOB. For good reason. I have been beaten up and beaten down for 45 years of Atlanta sports. So I'm cynical. I am. You've really got my team's never going to win. We're never going to get the team we want. The player's going to choose somebody else in free agency. So I am on the negative side of things, but I try and be realistic on this. And again, there's a lot of questions coming in. Never say never, but again, it's going to be a slog this year, and that's okay. Yep. They did that this year. Eat the dead cap money. Be a slog. They reward you for failing in the NFL. Well, then if you're going to fail big. Fail with flair. They'll reward you for it. Come out swinging next year. On that note, everybody, appreciate you being here. Thanks, Jamal and Mark, EJ, Luke, everybody, Ethan, for being here today. And check us out on iTunes. We are Forging the Falcons on Spreaker, on iTunes, wherever you happen to get your podcasts. We are here every Wednesday at 9 a.m. And Nick, it's almost football season.
It's almost football season. You guys have a good one. We'll see you tonight on MHI, and we'll see you tomorrow morning with Scott and I again.